What's up, NFL fans? Welcome to another episode of Four Down Territory. I'm your host, Luke Easterling, as always joined by Doug Farrar from Touchdown Wire. Doug, another fun one, another fun weekend, some big surprises. We didn't get any Justin Jefferson catches this week, but we got a lot of fun action to talk about.
Didn't get any Minnesota Vikings anything this week, Luke. Ouch.
That is true. That is true. That is true. We got a lot of NFL stuff to talk about, Doug, but the draft stuff near and dear to my heart. We're going to start in draft land, but not for good reasons, right? We're starting out with the unfortunate news. Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker goes down with a torn ACL in his left knee. I mean, that game was already bad, went from bad to worse early in the fourth quarter when he went down with injury. They end up losing 63-38 to South Carolina. The Gamecocks ran out of touchdown fireworks, Doug. Considering the injury, the timing of it later in the season, right, that we're seeing just now with Jamison Williams and the Lions just now returning to practice, exactly. Right? He tore his in the national title game. All of that considered, and the fact that I know we're going to get to this, but he's not the youngest quarterback prospect we've ever seen. Where do you place him in this 2023 draft class, right? It's a very unique, very interesting quarterback class. Is he a first-round pick to you still with these issues, or is he somewhere lower than that?
Yeah, by the way, this is going to be the ACL episode of Four Down Territory. As it turned out, I didn't, we were doing the rundown. I'm like, it's all ACLs.
Everything.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Hooker because I'm trying to, in my head, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are 1 and 2, and that's pretty much going to stick. It was the 3, 4, 5, 6 where I'm like, I don't know. So I watched a lot of Hooker's tape. He's my QB3 in this class at this point. And I think as long as he's ready for training camp, he'll do his combine interviews and he'll get medicals and all that. If he's ready for training camp, I'm cool with calling him a mid to late first round pick. All he's done in his 2 seasons with Tennessee after transferring from Virginia Tech is to complete 68.8% of his passes for 9.6 yards per attempt, 58 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. I'm no quarterback guru, Luke, but I think that's pretty good. If you want to ding him for his age, he'll turn 25 on January 13th. I guess that's okay. But we are in an era where, and this in Tampa, older quarterbacks are doing better. They frequently play into at least their late 30s. Maybe you can say that he benefits from a simplistic offense, but when I look at what Tennessee puts on the table, you look at the Eagles concepts, Chiefs concepts, the Rams concepts, pretty similar in a lot of ways. So I don't really see it that way either. I think the people who are dinging him for that are kind of living in the old school version of what a pro-style offense means. I think he's shown most of the attributes you need to be a successful starting quarterback in the NFL. And outside of Young and Stroud, who's number 3? Will Levis? You and I have discussed this at length off mic. No. Anthony Richardson, who I know you wrote a great piece on this, on why he could be the next Josh Allen. I think Richardson is going to be a developmental guy. He's a good quarterback, but I think in the NFL he's going to have to sit for a year. So if you're in a position 16 on down, or maybe 10 on down, because quarterbacks get, overfluffed in the process, and you need a guy right now, I think Hooker's fine. I think he reminds me of latter period Geno Smith, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. He's an excellent intermediate to deep passer. You blitz him at your peril. 8 touchdowns and no interceptions when he's blitzed. He had that clunker of a game against Georgia's defense. If you're gonna ding him for having a clunker of a game against Georgia's defense, you have to ding everybody else because that's right. Just the way it goes. So yeah, I would think from somewhere 16 to 32. I don't think he goes into the second round because his tape over the last 2 years, and certainly in 2022 as the absolute de facto starter, I think it's strong enough to be a first round guy.
Yeah, I think, honestly, a lot of teams could be reluctant to spend that first-round pick because of the issues you mentioned. Obviously, injury will play into it. But if he's going to be ready by the end of the season, by the beginning of the season especially, I don't see why you wouldn't. The quarterback position is just too important, right?
Well, an ACL, that's not a year and a half injury. It's 8-9 months. We're going to talk
and
a lot this episode.
Right. And it only takes one team, right? We say it every year with a bunch of different positions, a bunch of different players. It doesn't matter if 31 teams wouldn't spend a first-round pick on you. If one team would, that's what they're going to do. So the league has made way dumber decisions when it comes to first-round quarterbacks, right? We've seen some really bad ones. Hendon Hooker in the first round, I think, is not going to be one of those bad decisions. Regardless of his age, we've seen it full strength, right? His play this season, as good as any quarterback in the country. He's had some rough patches here and there, but again, great explanation for that is playing against Georgia. He's been without one of his two best receivers. I know Jalen Hyatt has played really well, but Cedric Tillman hasn't played for most of the season. Right. We finally got to see him make some plays. So even with those injuries, he's put up such big numbers. I mean, again, the position's too important. Hooker's proven he's got all the physical traits, all the mental traits as a leader to elevate that program to where they are right now. It has a lot to do with him. The win against Alabama to make the plays in crunch time against Nick Saban that he did. If you don't want that guy in the first round because he's 25 instead of 22 or 23, I feel like that's on you.
I'll take him, and you can just sit there and be dumb. And he's also a big guy who can run. He's not just a stationary pocket passer. Yeah. He's not, Justin Fields, but he can run. He's, so I think he has all the tools, and we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I think he's my QB3, and I don't really see that changing. And now, speaking of bad quarterback decisions, Luke, I was going to floor to you.
That was the segue, right? Let's get right to the NFL's propensity to make huge mistakes at the top of the draft when it comes to quarterbacks. Unfortunate news of another kind, right? Zach Wilson, the New York Jets.
It's so bad.
He's been a disaster.
So bad.
Yeah. So bad. 10-3. The loss to the Patriots on Sunday on a walk-off almost. Deshaun Jackson situation, right? We almost had a walk-off punt return for a touchdown. 5 seconds left. He completes 9 of 22 passes, Zach Wilson does. 77 yards, no touchdowns, no picks technically.
2 dropped interceptions.
Very easy ones that were dropped by Patriots defenders, right? Jets had more punts than Wilson had completions on Sunday. This is his 20th career start since the Jets selected him 2nd overall in 2021 draft, right after Trevor Lawrence. Have we seen enough already at this point to say the Jets need to go in another direction here, consider adding another potential starting quarterback in 2023, either through free agency or the draft, or do we still need to be a little bit more patient with a guy that's this young still?
It's not even so much the horrible performance this season, it's the regression. Like the footwork isn't getting better. Stepping up into his throws, it isn't getting better. His reads isn't getting better. He's among the worst quarterbacks in every category. That gives me pause as we get heavy into the second half of his second NFL season. It's the seeming inability to take responsibility for his part in dragging this team down that has me thinking he's not a franchise guy. And I don't know how you walk into that locker room again after what he said. Do you feel you let the defense down? Your automatic answer as a quarterback is yes. If you completed 40 of 42, if you went full Patrick Mahomes against the Chargers and some idiot asks you if you let the defense down, you say yes. I let the defense down. It's all my fault. Even if none of it's your fault. That's your responsibility as a quarterback.
That's the job.
And this is, he was saying yes last week. Nobody outside the building knows what they're talking about about his performance. Like, really? Well, it doesn't take a genius to watch the tape and realize where things are. The Jets have a great coaching staff. They have a top 5 defense, and they may miss the playoffs because their quarterback just doesn't get it. On Sunday, Patriots safety Kyle Duggar basically said that all you have to do, and I'm writing a piece on this now, all you have to do is against Wilson is show him any kind of disguised coverage because he can only get to his predetermined reads. That'll make him pause and either bail the pocket too early, take a sack, make a bad throw. And in an NFL where disguised coverages are more prevalent than ever, there's no way that works. Neither Mike White nor Joe Flacco constitutes a long-term answer. But even if they struggle to be worse, it's time for the Jets to punt on this guy because, again, how does he go back into that locker room with those defenders who they demolished New England's offense, and nobody's talking about it. And it's an insult to those guys, those coaches, those defensive players. Garrett Wilson, the rookie receiver, going off on the whole thing after the game. I mean,
he gets it. He gets it.
I think, when the Cardinals took Josh Rosen in the first round, they took Kyler Murray in the first round a year later. They punted. It was the right thing to do. I think the Jets may have to do it in this case. By the way, just before this is a really good argument for extending the trade deadline because if you're the Jets and you're looking at, say, a Gardner Minshew or a Drew Lock, wouldn't you give up a couple of mid-round picks right now to get a guy like that in your building? Probably. Anyway.
Yeah. I love the fact that evidently they're discussing moving that back in the future, and that definitely needs to happen.
So, Luke, your thoughts on this?
When I have concerns about a prospect, I'll say that I try to be as positive as possible when I'm evaluating these guys and just look at what they can do. and look at the trajectory that could happen, what could make them fit and make their fans excited about drafting them. I try not to dwell on the negative too much. And I always hope they prove me wrong, right? When I'm openly, right now it's Will Levis. We mentioned it earlier, right? You and I have both been very critical of him. I would love to be wrong about Will Levis. I hope he gets to the NFL and makes me look like an idiot. That's fine. He's got way more invested in that than I do, right? So when I said before that the 2021 draft, and when I said right after the 2021 draft that taking Justin Fields at number 2 should have been an absolute no-brainer for the New York Jets, right? Trevor Lawrence is going 1. I wrote it in my scouting report about Justin Fields. Any other draft class that didn't have Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields should be slam dunk, no question, number 1 overall pick, which means he should have gone number 2 to a team that needed a quarterback. Instead, they went with Wilson. I mean, it's got to hurt for Jets fans, right, to see what's happening with Justin Fields now in Chicago, now that he's getting any sort of help, right? Scheme, personnel, anything. And now you're finally starting to see that growth. You're seeing all of that progression. We talked about the regression with Wilson. You're getting the opposite of that in New York with a guy who's got probably more help and has had from the defense, from the playmakers they put around him. Go invest those resources. Offensive line, Elijah Vera-Tucker, the wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, and the other weapons they've added. Go give those to Justin Fields and tell me how much quicker we're going to see him develop. Give him a coaching staff and a playbook that's actually going to work with him. When you look at Wilson, it's just hard not to bang your head against the wall and go, why did they not take Fields? What did they see that was just so much better? You could say the same thing for the Carolina Panthers, obviously. You're seeing so much regression, the inability to take responsibility when your offense is clearly costing your defense wins. And you mentioned it, that's the most unforgivable part. We can forgive all these different ways in which young quarterbacks struggle at the NFL level. And he played Bill Belichick's defense on Sunday. That's fine. It wasn't a Sunday problem. The biggest problem Sunday was, like you said, what happened after the game. Mm-hmm. He's had these on-field problems really all year long against other defenses. It's not just a Bill Belichick problem. It's the fact that he doesn't seem to get it on the field yet. He doesn't seem to get it off the field, which might be more important at this point.
That's far more important.
It is. So I don't know what they'll do in the offseason in terms of, free agent, draft, whatever. But this defense is a playoff defense, maybe even a championship defense with the right offense. You cannot afford in this league to wait around and miss opportunities for those windows on offense and defense and coaching and all that to align. When those stars start to align, you had better have the quarterback who can at least be good enough to not lose you games and cost you performances from the defense like we saw on Sunday from the Jets. And because of that, the Jets absolutely cannot afford to go into 2023 with this as their best solution.
Especially if Wilson costs them a playoff berth, which it could happen. And the thing is, if they had Fields right now, they don't have a quarterback and they don't have a running game. If they had Fields, they have both. Whoops.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the ACL conversation. We said we were going to be ACL heavy on this episode, and we are going to be. But this one's good news, right? Odell Beckham Jr., he's about to return from the torn ACL he suffered in the Super Bowl. Adam Schefter saying there's at least 5 teams on his list, right? The Giants, Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, the 49ers, all contenders, right? If he's going to go do what he did with the Rams last season, right? Get signed in November, help his team win a Super Bowl. Which of these 5 teams, or even another team that's maybe not on that list, which of those clubs gives him the best chance to do that, Doug?
Speaking of lists, Luke, I'm going to give you a list. Wan'Dale Robinson and Sterling Shepard, both now out for the season with torn ACLs. Darius Slayton, Richie James, David Sills, Marcus Johnston, Kenny Galladay, who gets a standing ovation for catching a 14-yard pass. That's the receiver group, Luke, for the New York Giants, who are 7-3 somehow with an aggressive if vulnerable defense. Daniel Jones running the ball like Tim Tebow and building the entire offensive plan out of Saquon Barkley. That's going to bite them in the posterior at some point because no running back can handle the workload they're asking Saquon to do. And there is no other contending team more desperately in need of immediate help at the receiver position than Big Blue. If general manager Joe Schoen can initiate a reunion with Beckham, who the Giants selected with the 12th pick in the 2014 draft, he might be hailed as a conquering hero. Because if Beckham, and I wrote about this on Sunday morning, I went back and watched Beckham's tape from 2021. If he's the same player he was with the Rams in the second half of the 2021 season, and again, ACL healing, especially among lower body mass players like receivers, it's much better than it ever has been. He might be better than all the receivers on the Giants roster combined. He can, carry cornerbacks vertically with that leverage. He can explode out of clear out concepts. He can win in the red zone. He can allow Brian Daboll, the head coach and offensive shot caller, to do so much more of what he wants to do than Daboll is able to do right now. He could very well be the piece that pushes the Giants over the top in that highly competitive NFC East. I mean, he would be a force multiplier, to use one of my favorite terms, for any of those teams or any other team. But gosh, you talk about teams that might miss the playoffs because of one positional deficit. The Giants and their receivers, that could do it too. Beckham could make the difference.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I really want that to happen. I want that reunion. I want him to go back to the Giants. I would love to see it happen. But honestly, it's the fact that they would need him to be that guy that gives me concern about whether or not that would be the best fit for him to win a Super Bowl. If that's what we're talking about, what team gives him the best opportunity to come in and be that cherry on top, that guy that gets them over the hump and makes just maybe 3 or 4 plays a game, right, to get them to the next win, the playoffs, the Super Bowl. I don't think the Giants are that team. I feel like they feel way more like the 11-0 Steelers from a couple years ago, where they just kept winning and you didn't really necessarily know how, and then finally the wheels fell off. That's a really good comp,
yeah.
So in terms of teams that just give him an opportunity to come in and not have to be that guy, not get double-digit targets per game, not have to play 50, 60 snaps per game, and be immediately wide receiver one, go from rehab in the ACL to being the best receiver, the most relied on receiver, like, please save us. I don't like that type of situation for a guy coming off that injury and a guy that, again, if you're just looking for a way to contribute right away and just be an extra piece, I don't think that would be there. Yeah. I don't know that San Francisco would be either, right? I think those other three
offense and very run-heavy offense. So, yeah, that might get
right. So I think it would be a little bit better than the Giants because I think they've got some other pieces there on the offense. They wouldn't have to rely on him as much, but I look at those other 3 teams, and obviously the thing that stands out is the quarterback play, right? You got Dak Prescott, you got Josh Allen, you got Patrick Mahomes. If I'm Odell Beckham and I'm looking at these situations, I look at the quarterback play. I look at how much responsibility will immediately be placed on me to save things. He doesn't have to go save things in any of those places. Go look at the way Dallas played on Sunday. Go look at the way the Chiefs are playing at all, which we'll get to in just a moment. Go look at the way the Bills have played, and all 3 of those teams, very complete football teams that are ready to contend and don't necessarily need him to come and be a superhero. They just need you to come and be Odell for 3 or 4 plays a game, and he can do that. If I had my pick of those teams, which we'll get to in a second, there's no way I'm picking anybody other than Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs team right now. That's my ticket to another ring.
Wow. Yeah. And the thing about Beckham, and this is not a ding on him, but you remember last year when he signed with the Rams, and I think they played the 49ers first, and he and Stafford were way off because he'd had like 4 days sort of in the playbook. It takes a couple of weeks to get that going. Wow. Odell Beckham on the Chiefs. Break up the NFL. Yeah, that could be scary.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I mean, this seems like a much more difficult question than it was 2 weeks ago because we had an undefeated team. We don't now. No. But I think we're in agreement here. Who's the best team in the league right now?
As much as I like the Cowboys since Dak Prescott came back, they're like 3rd in offensive DVOA and that was before yesterday's game. I imagine they might be 1st after what they did to the Vikings. I have to go with the Chiefs because over the last 2 weeks, Patrick Mahomes has put on an absolute clinic in the art of quarterbacking. He's playing the quarterback, the throwing part of the position better than he ever has. And as long as that's the case, the Chiefs are, well, not unbeatable, but they're tougher to beat than any other NFL team. And if you want to ask one person on this earth, go ask Justin Herbert. I'm sure you saw the look on his face on the sideline as the Chiefs together 6-play, 75-yard game-winning drive to win Sunday night's game. Herbert knew. He knew. He's like, oh, God. We joke about, there's 2 seconds left. They have to go 98 yards. We gave Patrick Mahomes too much time. We joke about it, but it's true. And it was true again. Mahomes is inevitable. He just is. Death, taxes, and Patrick Mahomes. The Eagles have looked all too vulnerable over the last 3 weeks. Even when they win, it's not quite, it's just like, I don't know. They're having to pull stuff out against teams that are not at their level. I might replace the Chiefs with the Cowboys if they keep playing at the level they did against the Vikings. But right now, Mahomes has the rest of the NFL on a string, and that's where it all starts.
I would love to go full debate show and just come up with another reason to disagree and argue with you, but I can't.
It's the Texans.
Well, watching that game last night, I mean, they have the best quarterback in the league in Mahomes. They got maybe the most dangerous offensive weapon that's not named Tyreek Hill that used to be in Kansas City. Travis Kelce, I don't know how you defend that guy on a consistent basis. They've got one of the league's most dominant defenders in Chris Jones.
Yes.
They got one of the league's best coaches and coaching staffs with Andy Reid and
his staff. You got to talk
there.
more about Chris Jones, man, because right now it's not Aaron Donald, it's not Jeffrey Simmons. Chris Jones is the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL.
Yeah. And again, when you put those pieces on offense, those pieces on defense, and add the coaching element and what Andy Reid and his staff bring to what they're doing, I think they're the most complete team in the league. I think they're playing like it. And again, when you're playing this consistently in all three phases and you're able to do the things at will that these teams, that the Chiefs are able to do in all three phases, I think that makes them the best team in the league.
Plus, you're going to get playoff spags, right? All the weird blitzes and stuff. And yeah, could get interesting.
Yeah, don't want to face them.
Nope.
Don't want to face them.
Nope.
Well, that does it for us, Doug. Another week of 4-down territory in the books. We are excited about the next week of games. We're going to get some fun. Obviously, Thanksgiving Day games. We got a lot of good action coming this weekend. So hope you all enjoy the holiday week. For Doug Farrar, as always, I'm Luke Easterling, and we'll see you next week.
Happy holidays, everyone.